You are not here by chance. If this video has reached you, it's because there is something in your soul that already senses that the truths that shape the world are not exactly as they were told. There is a restlessness whispering within you. Could it be that everything we were told about God is truly the truth? Today we will talk about a subject most people fear to touch. Not because there is a lack of information, but because there are forces, both spiritual and human, invested in keeping the collective blindness alive. Prepare yourself. This is not a message for those who wish to remain comfortable. It is for those who have the courage to go beyond the walls of religions, human interpretations, and scriptures manipulated throughout history. When we look at sacred texts with attentive eyes, we see that the Bible itself presents contrasting characteristics between Yahweh and the Supreme Source. At times, Yahweh is portrayed as someone who punishes entire nations, commands wars, and demands sacrifices. In other moments, we see passages where a God of love, compassion, and forgiveness appears, attributes that align much more with the Supreme Source. The blending of these voices throughout the scriptures is the result of centuries of edits, translations, and manipulations, where the purity of the original message was intertwined with the agendas of those in power. The problem is that, over the millennia, most people have lost the ability to differentiate these voices. When everything is presented as the Word of God, spiritual discernment becomes a threat to the system, not a virtue. This confusion is not accidental. It keeps humanity in a state of dependency, seeking approval from a God who can change moods like an earthly ruler. And here is where manipulation becomes most evident. The fear of eternal punishment becomes the perfect tool to shape the behavior of the masses. But the Supreme Source does not operate through fear. It does not need to manipulate you to follow the path of light. It knows that an awakened consciousness naturally turns away from destruction and moves toward love, cooperation, and harmony. There are no threats of punishment, only a constant invitation to expansion. This is the key to identifying when we are facing the energy of the Source, and when we are facing an entity that, no matter how powerful, still operates within the limitations of ego and spiritual hierarchy. Some mystics, both Eastern and Western, claim that Yahweh could be part of a group of lesser gods, or advanced beings who intervened on earth with different intentions. While some may have genuinely sought human well-being, others may have established systems of control, demanding worship and obedience. Within this view, Yahweh would be one of these spiritual rulers, not the infinite, indescribable creator who permeates everything. This distinction is liberating, but it also demands courage. Questioning the traditional image of God means, for many, losing the emotional and social security that religion provides. It means being willing to walk through the desert of spiritual search without crutches, relying only on your direct connection to the Source. But it is precisely in that inner silence, far from external voices, that true revelation happens. It is in this moment that you realize you have never been separated from the Source, that it is not outside of you, but is the essence of your very existence. When this truth begins to blossom, your life changes. You stop seeking the approval of a punitive entity and begin to live aligned with universal consciousness. Decisions are no longer driven by fear, but by clarity and love. Morality ceases to be a list of rules and becomes a natural state of being, because your own consciousness will not allow you to act against the flow of life. This is the true divine law, not written on tablets of stone, but engraved in the heart of every being. And it is precisely this living law that threatens any system based on control. That is why, since ancient times, those who dared to speak about the difference between the Supreme God and the lesser gods were persecuted, silenced, or branded as heretics. The goal has always been the same: to keep the bridge to the Source hidden, so that people would depend on intermediaries. But truth has one quality that lies can never destroy. It resonates in the soul. When you hear it, something inside you awakens, and nothing can ever make sense the same way again. When you understand that the Source is infinite consciousness, pure, boundless love, you stop confusing it with entities that still operate. within the laws of cause and effect of the lower realms. The source does not require temples, does not demand sacrifices, and does not punish eternally. These are characteristics of rulers, whether human or spiritual, who need devotion to sustain their power. This doesn't mean that everything attributed to Yahweh is negative. There are passages where wisdom, protection, and care for human beings are evident. But these moments coexist with others that show jealousy, revenge, and the need for submission. Traits that reveal a being still evolving, still bound to duality. In contrast, the Supreme Source is beyond all duality. It simply is. If you pay attention, you will notice that the same dynamic repeats in many spiritual traditions. There are benevolent beings who guide and help humanity, and there are those who, despite their power, operate from the desire to be worshipped. Throughout history, these two forces have often been mixed, creating a theological patchwork where love and fear live side by side. The challenge of the seeker is to develop the discernment to separate one from the other. The path to this discernment is not about intellectual accumulation, but about direct experience. Meditation, contemplation, and inner silence are essential because they tune your consciousness to the frequency of the source. The more you connect with that pure frequency, the easier it becomes to identify when something, whether in a book, a teaching, or a vision, comes from the source or from a limited entity. This is why many sages of the past withdrew from the noise of society. It wasn't about rejecting people or despising the world, but about creating the inner space necessary to hear the subtle voice of the source. In the silence of the soul, illusions lose their strength, and the truth begins to shine with a clarity that no external doctrine can match. However, this journey is not for the faint of heart. You will face inner and outer resistances. There will be people who will call you arrogant for thinking you can connect directly with God without intermediaries. There will be times when doubt will hit hard, and you will wonder if you have gone too far. But it is in these moments that you must remember, every great awakening in human history has been the result of someone who dared to go beyond what was established. One of the greatest gifts of awakening is realizing that you are not a subject before a cosmic king, but a spark of the same essence that created galaxies. This realization is not an invitation to pride, but to responsibility. If the source lives within you, then every thought, word, and action is a creative act. You become aware that you are shaping reality with every choice. This awareness leads you to act with more love, compassion, and integrity, not because you fear punishment, but because you feel the unity of all life. And it is here that true worship takes place, not in the form of rituals or recited prayers, but in the way you live each day. Your life becomes the temple, your actions become the offering, and your consciousness becomes the altar where the source dwells. This is the spiritual maturity that no system of control wants people to reach, because an awakened being cannot be manipulated. There will come a moment when, as you walk this path, you will no longer feel the need to defend your beliefs or convince anyone of your discoveries. The truth does not need defenders. It reveals itself to those who are ready. You simply live it, and your life becomes a living testimony of what it means to be connected to the Supreme Source. And when that happens, you will understand why the voices of fear lose their power, why manipulation crumbles, and why your heart finds peace even in the midst of chaos. You will see that the source has never been a distant being watching your steps, but the eternal flame that lights your soul and guides you home. From this state of awareness, life takes on a different meaning. You are no longer just reacting to events, but consciously creating your path. You realize that even challenges are opportunities for growth, not punishments from an external God. Every obstacle becomes a mirror, reflecting aspects of yourself that are ready to be healed and integrated. This doesn't mean you won't feel pain, sadness, or confusion. But now you understand that these experiences are part of the human journey, and they too carry hidden gifts. The source does not remove all storms from your life. It gives you the inner strength to walk through them without losing your essence. As you advance, you start to notice signs, not from lower entities trying to bind you, but from the source itself, whispering through synchronicities, guiding you toward your true self. This is the insights, and subtle intuitions. These are not commands to be followed out of fear, but invitations to align with your highest self. The more you trust this connection, the more the universe seems to open doors you never imagined possible. And this is the point where the journey turns into service. When you realize you are part of the source, helping others awaken becomes natural. You no longer seek recognition or reward. You act because love overflows, and it cannot be contained. Whether it's through a kind word, a compassionate action, or simply by embodying peace, you start planting seeds that can awaken others along their own path. In this process, the old fear of death also begins to fade. You understand that death is not the end, but a return to the greater reality from which we came. The source is not waiting to judge you, but to welcome you home. This realization brings an unshakable peace, even when the outer world seems unstable. It is important to say that this awakening is not a single event, but a continuous process. You will have moments of great clarity and moments of doubt. But each time you reconnect with the source, you strengthen the bridge between your human experience and your divine essence. This bridge becomes your greatest treasure because it reminds you that you are never truly alone. And perhaps the greatest revelation of all is that the source was never hiding. It was always here, in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every moment of silence when your mind finally quieted down enough to listen. The truth is not distant. It is intimate. It is not reserved for the chosen few. It is the birthright of all. So my invitation to you is this: seek the source beyond the names, beyond the forms, beyond the rules created by men. Let your own soul lead you to that pure light. Trust your inner compass more than the noise of the world. When you do, you will not only find peace, you will become peace. Now that you have heard this message, do not let it be just words. Practice connection daily, even if only for a few minutes. Sit in silence, breathe, and remember who you are. Let the truth grow roots in your life until it transforms everything around you. And above all, make sure you watch the next video on this channel. It might be the missing piece that will change your perspective forever. Motivation you need, where your awareness expands and your soul finds direction.